Robert De Niro is once again making headlines, but this time it's not because of a new movie. The Hollywood legend has reportedly reignited the political conversation by talking about leaving the United States and spending time in Italy around the 2026 midterms. And the way he's talking about the country's political situation is already creating plenty of backlash. But there's a much bigger question here. Is this actually a serious decision? Or is De Niro simply making another dramatic political statement that will eventually blow over? Because we've heard Hollywood celebrities make similar announcements before, only to eventually return home. Before we break down exactly what De Niro said and why people are pushing back, make sure you subscribe to the WokeWatch so you don't miss the next Hollywood story. Hollywood and politics are once again colliding as celebrities become increasingly vocal heading into the 2026 midterm elections. Over the years, we've seen major stars use interviews, rallies, social media, and public appearances to express their political opinions. But there's a growing divide between celebrities and the audiences that help make them famous. For many viewers, the problem isn't necessarily that an actor has a political opinion. Celebrities are entitled to their views just like everyone else. The criticism begins when those opinions turn into lectures, personal attacks, or suggestions that people who disagree with them are somehow inferior. And that's exactly why Robert De Niro continues to generate so much controversy. De Niro has never been particularly quiet when it comes to politics, especially when discussing Donald Trump and his supporters. But after remaining relatively quiet for roughly 2.5 months, he's now back in the conversation, and his latest remarks are considerably more aggressive. According to the comments being circulated, De Niro talked about leaving the United States for a period of time and spending that time in Italy. He essentially framed the trip as a way to get away from the political environment in America and clear his head before and after the midterm elections. That immediately raised eyebrows, because when a celebrity as recognizable as Robert De Niro says he's leaving the country because he's frustrated with American politics, people are naturally going to pay attention. De Niro's comments focused heavily on his dissatisfaction with the current administration, immigration policies, and Trump's supporters. He described the political climate as extremely frustrating and argued that the country needs a major political change. He also encouraged people to participate in the upcoming elections and made particularly harsh comments about Americans who support Trump. One of the most controversial aspects of the statement was his suggestion that people who don't share his political position aren't truly American. And that's where the reaction becomes much more complicated. There's a huge difference between saying, "I strongly disagree with your politics," and telling someone that their political beliefs somehow make them less American. That kind of rhetoric is almost guaranteed to create backlash, especially when it comes from someone as famous as De Niro. And whether you agree with him or disagree with him politically, that's an important distinction. Now, here's where things get interesting. Is Robert De Niro genuinely planning to spend an extended period outside the United States? Or is this another example of a celebrity making a dramatic political declaration that doesn't necessarily translate into a permanent move? Because we've seen this story before. Over the years, several celebrities have threatened to leave the United States depending on the outcome of an election. Some actually relocated temporarily, while others eventually returned. One example frequently brought up in these discussions is Rosie O'Donnell, who spent an extended period living in Ireland before eventually returning to the United States. So De Niro wouldn't exactly be the first celebrity to temporarily step away from America because of political frustration. The real question is how long this particular absence would actually last. De Niro has indicated that his time in Italy would be connected to the period surrounding the midterms. That means we'll have to wait and see whether this becomes a short-term escape, an extended stay, or simply another headline that disappears after the election cycle. And this brings us to the larger issue. Why are so many Hollywood personalities becoming increasingly political? For some celebrities, political activism has been part of their public identity for years. But the problem is that Hollywood doesn't have a single audience. A major actor can have millions of fans with completely different political beliefs. Some may agree with everything the celebrity says, others may completely disagree. And many simply don't care about politics when they're watching a movie. That's why aggressive political commentary can create a strange situation for entertainers. An actor may believe they're standing up for an important cause, while part of their audience sees the same comments as unnecessary political lecturing. And that can change the way people view the celebrity. This is something that has become increasingly noticeable with Robert De Niro. Think about some of his most famous performances: Casino, Raging Bull, Goodfellas, The Godfather Part 2. These are legendary movies that helped establish De Niro as one of the most respected actors of his generation. But when an actor becomes extremely outspoken outside of their work, some viewers begin having difficulty separating the performer from the characters they once admired. Instead of completely disappearing into the role, audiences may start thinking about the actor's real-world personality. And that's not necessarily fair to the actor, but it's a reality that comes with being a massive public figure. The stronger a celebrity's public persona becomes, the harder it can sometimes be for audiences to separate that persona from their work. Another part of this political discussion involves speculation surrounding Donald Trump potentially seeking another presidential term. But there's an important distinction that shouldn't be overlooked. A president serving a third elected term would run into the 22nd Amendment, which limits presidents to being elected to the office twice. So whenever claims about a third Trump term circulate online, it's important to distinguish between political jokes, speculation, and an actual legal path to another elected term. Regardless of where anyone stands politically, those are three very different things. And that's also why it's worth being careful when discussing celebrity political statements. A dramatic quote can generate millions of views online, but that doesn't automatically mean every interpretation surrounding it is accurate. The bigger question now is whether this latest political controversy will have any meaningful impact on Robert De Niro's career. That's difficult to predict. De Niro already has one of the most established careers in Hollywood history, so it's not as though one political statement is suddenly going to erase decades of work. But audience perception is a different story. When celebrities repeatedly make extremely aggressive political comments, some viewers eventually stop separating the celebrity from the entertainment itself. And that's where the real risk exists. Not necessarily losing an entire career, but gradually alienating part of the audience. We've already seen how divided Hollywood audiences can become over politics, and De Niro's latest comments are unlikely to bring those sides any closer together. If anything, they're likely to create another round of arguments across social media. Another factor is that De Niro's political statements can overshadow the projects he is actually promoting. Instead of audiences discussing a new film, performance, or upcoming role, the conversation quickly shifts toward his comments about elections and political opponents. For an actor with such a long and respected career, that can be frustrating because the public begins focusing more on controversy than on his work. At the same time, De Niro's supporters may argue that his fame gives him a responsibility to speak out. They may believe that celebrities should not remain silent simply because their opinions could upset part of their audience. His critics, however, see the situation differently and argue that Hollywood stars often underestimate how disconnected their political messages can sound to ordinary Americans. This is why the reaction may depend less on one individual statement and more on what De Niro does next. If he continues making politics the center of every public appearance, the backlash could grow. But if he returns his attention to acting and allows the controversy to fade, the public may eventually move on. So now the question is simple. Will Robert De Niro actually spend a significant amount of time in Italy before and after the midterms? Or will this eventually turn into another temporary Hollywood escape story? We'll have to wait and see. And regardless of your political views, I'd like to hear your opinion on this one. Do you think celebrities should stay out of politics completely? Or do they have every right to use their platforms to speak out? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the WokeWatch for more Hollywood and pop culture updates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.